We're speaking with J. Christian Adams, who recently resigned from the Justice Department over, well, what could be some, I don't even know what even to describe it at, just frustration over people ignoring the law. Now, you had 6 career attorneys who recommended to continue prosecuting these members of the new Black Panther Party, and then I guess it was Associate Attorney General Thomas Pirelli who said, nah, we don't see anything here. How did that go down? And were there people, did anyone argue with this guy?
Well, the department has testified in front of the Civil Rights Commission in Washington that the facts and the law didn't support the case. I testified in front of the Civil Rights Commission 2 days ago, and part of my testimony was one of the people on the team, Christopher Coates, learned that the people who dismissed it didn't even read the memo involved in the case, and that's when he threw the memo at the political appointees who didn't even read it before they dismissed it, kind of like the Arizona immigration law.
Oh, my gosh. So now we have them ignoring this voter intimidation law and now apparently refusing to follow the law when it comes to the motor voter law. Take us through that one.
Okay. Motor voter, your listeners may remember, was passed back in the 90s, and it was meant to increase registration and increase integrity. So you didn't have dead people on the rolls, you didn't have convicted felons who weren't eligible to vote. In the past, for example, the Bush administration has sued states because they aren't registering enough people at public service agencies, but it also sued them because they had too many dead people and too many ineligible voters that were on the voter rolls. We received instructions in November of 2009 that the integrity side of that equation, the part that you keep the lists credible, was going to be shut down, that they're just not going to even look at whether or not you have ineligible voters on the rolls.
Now, you testified before the Civil Rights Commission. Do you see this going anywhere from here?
Well, it depends on how you define going anywhere. I think it's already there. The public now knows that there's a culture of lawlessness in the Civil Rights Division when it comes to fairly enforcing the voting statutes. I mean, I think we're there. And, the public knows now. Maybe it's up to them to decide what they think about it and do what they want to do.
Now, who is this Julie Fernandez?
Julie Fernandez is the Deputy Assistant Attorney General. She's a very powerful person in charge of the voting section, which is the federal election section inside the Justice Department. She is the person who gave the orders in November of 2003 that we aren't going to look at whether dead people or ineligible voters are on the rolls. She told that to the entire voting section.
And what's the motivation of doing that? Did she tell you that there was a purpose?
Of course, and that is that those laws, those federal laws that Congress passed and the President signed, don't do anything to increase turnout. And those are really barriers to the ballot box, not things to increase it. So we don't have any interest in enforcing that kind of law, is what she literally said.
So, well, wait a minute. Why would she consider removing dead guys and people who moved or for whatever reason from the voters' rolls? Why would that have anything to do with turnout? Oh. Turnout is about motivating people to go vote. It's not about who's on the rolls.
But you have to understand there's a huge hostility among a lot of groups, very well-funded civil rights groups, to Section 8 of the NVRA, the list maintenance provisions. They criticize any efforts to remove people from the rolls. So you need to realize there's a whole industry devoted to stopping this federal law from being enforced. Now they have someone who's sympathetic to that view running the show.
In your opinion, by the way, we're talking with J. Christian Adams, who recently resigned from the Justice Department over what sounds like... Well, first of all, let me ask you this question. Do you think this is race-based?
Well, I don't think it's racist. There's no question, however, that it's a failure to racially to enforce the law in a racially neutral fashion. There's no question about that. That one side is aggressively pursued while the other side is not. I don't know if it's racist, but it's definitely not racially fair.
How easy is it, from your perspective, from working at the Justice Department and dealing with these issues, with all these dead voters and basically people who aren't supposed to be on the voter rolls anymore? How easy is it for I'll use the term agents provocateurs, to, well, basically use those votes for their own agenda. In other words, just cast those votes for those people that are supposed to be removed from the rolls. How easy do you think it is for someone to do that?
Well, it's extremely easy. As a matter of fact, if you go to my website, electionlawcenter.com, I list a lot of them, and some of them are in Minnesota. There's a group called Minnesota Majority that's been studying who actually voted in the 2008 presidential election, and they found in places like Ramsey County and a place I might mispronounce it, Hennepin County, Minnesota.
You got it. You nailed it. Hennepin, you nailed it.
Yeah, and it's up at my website at electionlawcenter.com. KSTP has covered this, and I guess that's in Minneapolis. There are illegal people voting in your elections in Minnesota. This is a fact. Right now, in the 2008 presidential election, convicted felons who were not eligible to vote were voting for president.
Wow. Holy guacamole. This is this something that has gone on for years between both sides, or is this something that's a little more common with one side, in your opinion?
Well, you know, ineligible people that are alive and kicking tend to be felons. And I haven't done any studies as to for who felons like to vote. But there's a federal law that's supposed to stop this. There's a federal law that says if you're not eligible to vote, then the federal government needs to come in and bring a lawsuit and clean up the voter rolls. And I'm telling you that this administration is simply not going to do it because they have said so.
Is there any recourse? I mean, what can people do about it? I mean, is this one of these things that, look, this Julie Fernandez is in her position, and the only way you could bring a case would be through her, so that would never happen? I mean, what recourse do the American people have at this time?
Well, they can clean house. Remember, it's your elected officials, and if you want to see the people who are causing the problem gone, then let people know. I mean, that's one recourse. You know, congressional oversight is another recourse. If not this Congress, maybe the next Congress. I mean, these are the only mechanisms we have left right now, given the last election results, to do something about this, is complaints and the next election.
Oh, my. Now, they accuse you of having a political agenda. Are you a Confederate? They love to use that term. Are you a Confederate, Mr. Adams?
Yeah, hardly. Listen, I believe in equal enforcement of the law. I take there was no part of the Constitution that was purchased with so much blood and treasure than the Civil War amendments. The 14th and 15th Amendment guarantees to racial equality. And I take that very, very seriously. So many people lost their lives both in the Civil War as well as in the civil rights struggle to enshrine racial equality. It's always interesting when you see people smear the messenger when they don't want to talk about the merits. Bring on the merits. Do you want to enforce the law equally or not? Let's talk about that. I know the answer. They know the answer, so all they can do is smear.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of common now, intellectually shallow. Mr. Adams, we really want to thank you very much. J. Christian Adams, thanks a lot for coming on the Chris Baker Radio program, and thanks a lot for taking a stand. We always admire that here, and we always admire that. Good for you, and watch your back, okay?
Okay, sir. Take care.
All right, thank you so much. Chris Baker Radio program. Well, listen, I want to get your reaction. This is quite frightening. Chris Baker Radio program.